This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nihiri, and it's Monday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Over the last few months, I've done videos that have covered the best Planeswalkers with monocolored identities, and we're rounding out that series of top 10s today with a look at the Planeswalkers that have multicolored identities. I'm sure someday I'll do one on colorless Planeswalkers, but right now there aren't enough of those for that to be a thing. So if you've ever had to play against Planeswalkers in pretty much any format, you know they're super strong. Left unchecked, many of them are capable of winning the game due to the powerful effects they bring along every turn, so they are pretty interesting to look at. But it should be obvious I think that since I've done an MTG Top 10 on Planeswalkers in general, and updated it several times in addition to doing one on every color. Anyway, to be eligible for this video, a Planeswalker had to have a multicolored identity. There is one exception to this, Garruk Relentless, who I included in the video on green Planeswalkers since he only actually costs green mana. So subtracting Garruk, we're left with 97 multicolored Planeswalkers, and in this video we'll talk about the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before I get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Fest or Grand Prix is worth 1 point. Before we get into the list, I want to take some time to tell you about this video's special sponsor, Into the AM. They've sponsored a couple of videos of mine over the last few months, and they have great products. They're an apparel company that sells all kinds of awesome stuff, including graphic tees like this one that I'm wearing now. This one is called Life Cycle, and like most of their tees, it's brightly colored with a really neat design. This one shows the tree in different periods of its life. Trees and birds are two things that I love that are common motifs in their shirts too, so if you think this one is cool, they have some others you'd probably like too. In addition to having awesome designs like this one, their shirts are also a surprisingly great fit. I'm a big guy, and this usually means I need to wear big and tall clothing, but this XXL shirt fits me great. And they have a wide range of sizes, from small all the way up to 4XL. Right now, they're running a promotion where you can get 3 graphic tees for $60, and if you use my special referral link, you get an extra 10% off. I highly recommend these shirts. You can find the link in the description. Alright, let's get back to top 10 multicolored Planeswalkers. At number 10, it's Ren N6, one of only two mana Planeswalkers in the game, and this one's a lot better than the other one. Ren N6 was printed in the special set Modern Horizons, which skipped standard legality, and they could really push this 2-mana Planeswalker as a result. Ren N6 can ping opposing creatures, a pretty powerful effect. Pretty much all formats have a lot of X1s, and being able to kill one with a Planeswalker and then keep your Planeswalker in play is pretty great. But on top of that, this Planeswalker can also return lands from your graveyard to your hand. This can be fetch lands or other utility lands, and Ren also has a pretty sweet emblem that gives your whole graveyard retrace. Ren N6's ping effect has had a very real effect on the formats it's legal in because it makes creatures who are X1 significantly worse, and as a result, fewer and fewer of those are being played. In Modern, Ren N6 has been largely featured in Jund decks, but it also has a few points in Death Shadow, Scapeshift, and Ramp. Ren N6 has also been played in the Eternal formats, where it can help you recur lands that destroy other lands, really depriving the opponent of mana. In Legacy, the +1 and -2 together could easily turn Ren N6 into a land destruction engine that also punished any deck playing X1s, and that was too powerful for the format, resulting in it eventually getting banned there. Still, Ren N6 maintains legality in both Vintage and Modern, and it will continue to gain points in both of them. In Vintage, it's played in the graveyard-oriented Canadian Threshold deck and the Planeswalker-oriented Planeswalker Control deck. Ren N6 is very likely to continue to move up this list. At number 9, it is Ajani, Mentor of Heroes. This Selesnya Ajani comes with 2 +1s. The first can raise his loyalty while distributing 3 +1/+1 counters and up to 3 creatures, and the other gives you some pretty nice card selection, and he's also got an ultimate that gains you 100 life, which is usually enough to put the game out of reach for your opponent. While it is a single Pro Tour top 8 in both Block and Modern, most of Ajani's points have come in Standard, where it was featured primarily in the format-defining Abzan mid-range deck. In all cases, Ajani was played alongside several other Planeswalkers, and its second +1 ability was useful for helping you find them. Getting a bunch of Planeswalkers out at once is pretty powerful. While it has found some success in Modern, it came way back in 2015 while it was still in Standard, and it hasn't gained any points since then. Ren N6 is likely to pass it in the very near future. At number 9, it is Asheok, Dream Render. Fun fact, this is the first time that one of my preview cards has ever made an MTG Top 10. I had the privilege of unveiling this powerful Planeswalker during War of the Spark preview season. This multicolored Planeswalker is a bit unusual in that there's only a single loyalty ability, and it only decreases loyalty. This was true of most of the uncommon Planeswalkers in War of the Spark. However, also like War of the Spark Planeswalkers, Asheok does come with a static ability. Both of Asheok's abilities hate uncommon strategies. The static ability prevents your opponent from being able to tutor things up, and the loyalty ability allows you to go after the graveyard, simultaneously milling your opponent and exiling that whole graveyard. Both of these are great things in the right matchups, and as a result, Asheok has seen sideboard play in Standard, Pioneer, Legacy, and Vintage, and it's likely to continue to amass points due to Asheok's ability to disrupt powerful decks in multiple formats. At number 7, it is Zenigos, the Reveler. This is a multicolored planeswalker that really likes creatures. His +1 gives you mana equal to the number of creatures you control. His 0 ability makes a 2/2 Satyr creature token that does a good job of protecting Zenigos, and his ultimate lets you put creatures and lands directly onto the battlefield from the top of your library. All of these abilities are pretty nice in creature-heavy decks. Unsurprisingly, it was mostly played in aggressive decks in Standard, like Naya, Jund, and Gruul. It hasn't gained any points since rotating out of Standard, though it has gotten close to some top 8s in Pioneer, Gruul aggro decks. At number 6, it is Nihiri, the Harbinger. Nihiri is a very powerful, multicolored planeswalker who starts with high loyalty. If you play her and use her +2, she's already at 6, and that's a ton. In addition to helping improve your draws with that rummage effect, she can also remove a number of different types of permanents. Nihiri also has a very nice ultimate, which, in the right deck, can search up frightening creatures who can end the game in a hurry. And, a lot of planeswalkers and their ultimate ability isn't that important. With Nihiri, the ultimate is very important. She was played in a lot of different Standard decks, but Mardu Vehicles is where she was played the most. Vehicles themselves are actually a pretty big part of why she was played so much in Standard, because she could exile the problematic ones. She has seen some play in Modern too, most frequently in Jeskai control decks, which usually run something pretty spicy to search up, like Emrakul. She's also been played in Pioneer Niv Mizzet Reborn decks, where she can be a card that Niv can hit with his Enter the Battlefield ability, and if she comes down before Niv and gets her loyalty high enough, she can search him up. Nihiri doesn't have any points since 2020, but she does seem likely to gain more points in the future. At number 5, it is Dak Faden. Like Ren N6, Dak was printed in a supplemental set, in his case, Conspiracy. Unlike Ren N6, Dak wasn't legal in Modern, and has had to gain all of his points in the Eternal formats, but that's okay because Dak is powerful enough to be played there. For 3 mana, Dak does a ton of work. He can tick up and help you loot through your library, finding you what you need, until you get enough loyalty on him to activate his incredibly powerful ultimate that lets you start stealing your opponent's stuff. His -2 is also great in formats loaded up with powerful artifacts, and Legacy and Vintage are certainly that. He only has a few points in Legacy, but has done a ton in Vintage, a format where you can steal Moxen and other mana rocks, as well as just about every single card in Mud decks. Because artifact-heavy decks are so prevalent there, Dak sees play in a wide variety of decks, including Delver, Oath of Druids, Landstill, Monastery Mentor, and Storm. Dak is very likely to continue to accumulate points going forward, and will likely be moving up this list. At number 4, it is Soren, Solemn Visitor. Soren is a strong planeswalker because he has the ability to create evasive creature tokens that protect him, and he has a +1 that really pays you off for going wide, which his first ability helps you do, because it can both inflict extra damage and gain you a ton of life, making it impossible for your opponent to race you. The Edict Ultimate is the kind of thing that will eventually result in you winning the game too, because most decks can't afford to just lose a creature every turn like that. In both Standard and Modern, Soren has mostly been played in token decks, which can take the most advantage of his +1. He hasn't been played anywhere since 2016, and it's likely that some of the more active planeswalkers beneath him, like Dak Faden and Ren N6, will ultimately pass him. At number 3, it is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. The top 3 walkers on this list have more than 100 points, which is a pretty big leap from Soren's Solemn Visitor's 64. These 3 cards on the top definitely represent the top tier not only of multicolored Planeswalkers, but Planeswalkers more generally, as all 3 of them made the 2021 update to my top Planeswalkers list. Anyway, this Teferi has a +1 that lets you draw cards while still leaving mana up so that you can interact with your opponent on their turn, and a -3 that is an amazing tempo play, as putting your opponent's best permanent 3 deep into their library can go a long way towards keeping Teferi around for a while. Teferi was big for control decks across all formats. Those are decks that can do a great job of making use of the lands Teferi untaps with his +1, and they do a good job of making the game last long enough to use Teferi's ultimate, at which point the game is effectively over. Teferi is still amassing points across multiple formats, but so are the cards in front of it, so he may be pretty much locked in to the number 3 spot on this list. At number 2, it is Oko, Thief of Crowns. Oko may be the card that first comes to your mind when you think about powerful multicolored Planeswalkers, and that makes sense because he's pretty insane. He's one of the most maligned cards released in the last couple of years, and this is because he was just way too powerful. All his abilities are great, and he only costs 3 mana. His +1 is really the most powerful one, as you can use it to turn your opponent's best creature or artifact into a vanilla 3/3, and you can also use it on your own stuff, like the food Oko makes, or other creatures you have to make them into better permanents. His -5 isn't used a ton, but it does allow you to exchange control of things, like by giving them your food for something much better of theirs. The printing of Oko had an impact on every single format. He was the most overpowered in Standard, where he was only legal for about 2 months, and yet managed to gain 60 points in the format. The peak of his Standard dominance came between August 8th and 10th of 2019, when he was in 18 of the 24 decks to top 8 Premier events. He was ultimately banned out of Standard, Pioneer, Historic, Modern, Legacy, and even Brawl. These days, he's still legal in Vintage, and he's powerful enough to see regular play there. That definitely played a role in suppressing Oko's score, and if he hadn't been banned in all these formats, it's pretty clear he would be number 1 on this list. At number 1, it is Teferi, Time Raveler. As a War of the Spark Planeswalker, he comes with a static ability, and his is a doozy. He makes it so your opponent can't cast spells at instant speed. Meanwhile, his +1 makes it so you can cast all of your sorceries at instant speed. Those 2 things combined make it so that the person who controls Teferi has all the interaction in the world, while the person staring down the Teferi will have none. His -3 also lets you bounce most non-land permanent types while drawing you a card. Overall, this Teferi just takes over games. He may not have a real ultimate, but his static ability is super powerful and enough for Teferi Time Raveler to be played in every single format. Ultimately, it was banned in Standard, Historic, and Pioneer, which might make you think Teferi's overall score is even more impressive. Teferi gained a massive 126 points in Standard before being banned there. Teferi will continue to gain points in non-rotating formats going forward, and I would guess he'll be the number 1 card on this list for the foreseeable future. So those are the 10 multicolored Planeswalkers that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of these powerful cards, check out the description where you'll find direct links to Card Kingdom for every single one of them. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, subscribe and turn on notifications. If you're looking for more MTG Top 10s, including more about Planeswalkers, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. And lastly, if you want to help support the channel, you can on Patreon. Thanks for watching.